us today. Welcome to the show. This is the launch. I'm Shaun Michael Samaroo, and we're launching out of the research. So I'm an author, and I'm writing books, and we have a book publishing company, and a media company, and a technology startup company. And out of all the research that we do as a myself as well as my small team, we've come up with some understanding, if you will, or some information about how society is advancing, where we're going as the COVID situation is continuing, and we want to play our role and do our bit to help as many people as we can through this show, which we are now launching, we're now starting, and hopefully as we develop, we can grow a bigger and bigger audience uh, on several online platforms. And we'll be rolling out different things as we go along. I mean, our company publishes a magazine, the Millionaire Mindset magazine. We publish an online newspaper called People Today Chronicle. We publish a site, which I'll be sharing all these eventually. So this is a series. We're launching a series on the future. The bottom line of what we do as a company is we teach people how to alter their future, how to invent a new possibility. Instead of living in the past, instead of living historically, let us live to create. Now, we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we know one thing: we're powerful as human beings, and the world that we live in today, maybe not 200 years ago, but definitely today, we can design our tomorrow. So we are coming with this belief that we might not know what tomorrow holds, but guess what? Tomorrow is in our hands. We can design tomorrow, we can create new possibility, we can invent a new person who we want to be, we can invent a new lifestyle, we can invent a new way of being, we can create the life that we want. Now, of course, within certain context. And the context that we have right now is, unfortunately, the COVID situation. And we've been studying, we've been going through some of the ramifications of the COVID situation over the past year, not just one society. We're in Canada, we're in Ontario, and it's a relatively developed society, like much of the world, but what we faced for the past year was a global uh, situation, right? A global crisis, if you will, really, because people started freaking out everywhere. A lot of people saw their income affected. Economies are suffering around the world. Governments are scrambling to uh, roll out stimulus packages. Sorry. So we want to launch a series. We're launching a series today, every week, and eventually maybe we'll do a daily update on what we're doing. And eventually you'll see articles in our online newspaper, the People Today Chronicle, and you will see monthly articles in our and other content, videos and stuff, in our magazine, Millionaire Mindset magazine. You will see, and we have a headline site. So one thing we do is go around the internet, look at the major media that is the newspapers, the TV stations, all the major world media, and we take top headlines and we put it for us to say 10, 12 headlines every day. So you can follow our site and know what's going on in the world. Here's why that's important. We have to know the kind of world that we live in. If we don't know the world that we live in other words, our global context, it's hard for us to plan our lives. It's hard for us to create the tomorrow that we want to see happen. And we want to play a role in whatever little way we can to engage an audience globally through the internet for us to work together. We don't have the answers. We don't have all the answers. We do some research, we come up with some information. We're going to be sharing that information with you, and we would like you to engage back with us for us to have a conversation. And hopefully one day it's going to grow into a global conversation. I know some of my friends and family will be watching this broadcast, and And other people who don't know me. By the way, my background is journalism. I've spent years, many years in the newspaper industry. Of course, the newspaper industry is not as robust as it used to be, to put it mildly. And so I'm at an age now where I'm moving away from uh, journalism and mass media into more creative work, but especially books. So I'm authoring books. We have 11 books that we're about to publish in a new technology that we developed, that the company Qualped Life Corporation invented and developed, called SILs Books, which is an innovation on ebooks. So ebooks were invented, just quickly, ebooks were invented back in 1971 way back, nearly 50 years ago, 50 years ago, actually, this year, by Michael Hart in the United States. And since then, since 1971, believe it or not, to now, nothing really has been done with books. We saw innovation happen with music, with movies, with everything else except the most advanced form of knowledge, which is books. So I took on that problem, and for the past, has to be like 9 years, I've been staring at this problem and researching it and trying to solve this problem. How do we get people to read more? Because one of the problems with the COVID situation is people are not informed as they should be, right? People are not reading. Understandably, it's boring to read when you can watch Netflix, right? Or when you can go on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and engage with the world on a different level with exciting videos and all those things. It's hard for us to read today. But we want to change that. We want to make books exciting. We want to change the device that is the book from, one-dimensional black text on white paper, this black and white thing, into more of an engaging, exciting, multimedia, smart. A book should be a smart device. We're working on it. I just say that, by the way, to let you know that we're not coming with a show out of nowhere and out of no knowledge base. We're delving into knowledge. We are delving into the reservoir of knowledge. Researching, reading, writing, thinking, brainstorming, mind mapping. Out of doing all that research and that thinking and content development, we're coming up with some knowledge, some ideas of what is going on in the world. And we want to share this with you because we believe that if we share it with you, then we are helping to kind of clarify the situation, if you will, because we're confused, right? I mean, governments, leaders, average people, workers, moms and dads, and young teenagers and young adults who are now entering the workforce. It's a confusing time. And so we want to bring some light, enlightenment, insight, some foresight into society and what is going on. And we are approaching this task with a very optimistic viewpoint. We're not approaching this with, things are falling apart and what is government doing and all these conspiracy theories that are floating around. We're not going to do that. What we're doing is simply looking at the situation, delving into the research and the material and in other words, what's going on in the back room, what's going on behind the curtains, what's going on out there in academia and official government circles and the people who make the decisions about how the world runs. So we look into that. This kind of information is public information. It's out there. And we delve into this and we want to bring you the optimistic view. We want to bring you the positive news. We want to bring you the good things that are on the cusp of happening. In other words, the world is reinventing a new tomorrow. And instead of us focusing on what is going on now and how bad the situation is, why don't we focus on, things are changing, yes, transformation is happening, but how can we position ourselves that we're not victims of that new tomorrow, but we're victors. We create the future that we want. We create the atmosphere in our life, the lifestyle. We are powerful. We are masters of our own destiny. We elected the government. Our vote is in democracies, of course, maybe not in China, but definitely in the Western world and much of the earth today, which is democratic. Uh, Ordinary, average, you and me, we elect our government, and that one vote counts. What does that show? We're powerful. The individual is powerful. You are powerful. The only thing it takes is for us to be informed, for us to become knowledge beings. We have to delve into the kind of knowledge that would, listen, a lot of people say, they complain about life. Oh, I work, and the old world that we live in, people would work 50 years, 40 years, whatever, and then retire, and they're too old to do anything. Some people are very healthy and they travel the world and do great things. But does that work? Does that kind of society work? Does that kind of life work anymore? Maybe it does. Maybe for some people it does. Maybe for some people it doesn't. But how do we, in the new world that is emerging, how do we escape that 9 to 5 lifestyle, which kind of ties us down, right? Which puts us in a situation where we're, let's face it, economic slaves to some big corporation that pays us a set salary. And for example, we are facing a world now where prices are going up for everything. Gas price jumped in Canada over the past 2 weeks, like 20 cents a liter. So gas prices going up, groceries are going up, utilities are going up, clothing is going up, prices are going up for everything. But wages and salaries remain the same. In the United States, we see Bernie Sanders, Senator, fighting to raise the minimum wage of the United States minimum wage system from, I don't know what it is, maybe $7, $8, whatever it is, to $15. And he's getting huge pushback. I'm not saying if I support him or not. What I'm saying is, the point I'm making is that people, the wages and the salaries of people, of the average human being on the face of the earth today, remains basically stagnant, except for the exceptional elite worker who's so much in demand that their salary or their wages would jump just to keep them on board. But for the average person, no, it doesn't happen. Do we want to continue with a world like that, right? So that's our viewpoint. We want to look at things positively. We don't want to panic. We don't want to look at a situation where life is dark and ugly. It isn't. Life is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. But in COVID, how do we experience this beauty? How do we experience the aesthetics of life? How do we still travel? How do we still enjoy life, right? For me, I delve into literature. I love literature and fiction and novels and stuff. It's beautiful, and even movies, right? I learned a lot. So anyway, we are launching this series, and it's a series. It's going to go for about 12 weeks, 12 episodes. And over the 12 episodes, we want to generate, this is our goal, we want to generate awareness, a new consciousness. We want to alter the consciousness of our viewers, our audience. So bear with me. I'm not the most exciting presenter, but I have information, I have knowledge. I know you would be impacted and you would be educated. Well, maybe educated in terms of being more aware of some things, right? You would learn something, but also from your feedback to me through social media, through Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all the platforms we're streaming on, which is I think about 15 or 20 platforms. Give us feedback, criticize, constructive criticism, or enhance what we think we know if you have deeper knowledge. On this first episode, I want to zero in on an important factor that is going on right now. So we know COVID is going on. We know the world situation is, they might move like is happening in Europe right now. The whole world might follow Europe and move into that third wave of locking down everything. Now Canada and Ontario, where we are right now, is thinking of next week opening up more and allowing, less restrictions. But the third wave in Europe is showing that the third wave is coming, and it's going to be global, and the lockdown could be worse than it was in the second wave. or the first wave. What do we do? As average ordinary person, we can't control the system. We don't know what is happening out there. So what do we do? How do we handle this thing? How do we mentally, emotionally, how do we prepare for tomorrow and the future? It's an important question. For this first episode, this is what I would like us to consider. I would like to plant in the consciousness of you, our viewers, this idea. Let me back up a little bit. I live in a city called Oshawa in Ontario, Canada. It's a beautiful city, but COVID has devastated the downtown core of Oshawa. Now, Oshawa used to be at one time the biggest city in Ontario, apart from Toronto, in terms of its industrial nature. So GM plant was here at one time in the 80s. They employed like 50,000 people. The GM plant, and they were making trucks and cars and all GM vehicles and everything. And the city was booming. It became an industrial giant. Now in COVID, the downtown core of Oshawa is facing enormous social stress. The streets are, you see a lot of homeless people, drug addicts, mentally challenged. It's the city that I live in, my city, which I love, I can see what's going on, and I can imagine what's going on elsewhere. There's a story in this, how our city became an industrial city. Back in 100 years ago, precisely in 1918, this city signed a deal with General Motors from the United States for General Motors to take over a local car company, the McLaughlin Car Company, and open up a huge plant. Today it's 3 million square feet, I think, of space that is now converting into electrical vehicles and stuff like that. But back then, 100 years ago, this city, Oshawa, was an agricultural town. So all the roads, all the highways, all the streets, which now are paved and modern, and like any well-developed society around the world, it was all dirt road back then, and horses were the means of transportation, and horses would be buggies would be hooked up to horses to transport people around the place and stuff. This was 100 years ago, so it was an agricultural town. There was no gas station, there was no road system, there was no motor car. Horses were pulling buggies, and one of the main business back then was a company in the heart of the city, which was a town. Back then it wasn't the city. Bear with me with the story, it's important. They produced buggies for horses, which was back then the mode of transportation. So people would jump into their buggies, one horse would pull it, or 2 horses, or 4 horses, depending how fast you want to go. And this is how the system was in the city for 100 years ago. Then Henry Ford invented the motor car. This is what actually happened. This is fascinating. Henry Ford invented the motor car engine and the Ford Motor Company in the United States in the early 1900s. And so the guy who was running the buggy company in Oshawa, this city here, this is amazing. He decided that he's going to import an engine from Ford Motor Company in Detroit, in the United States, and install that engine in the buggy instead of a horse pulling the buggy now, you would have this engine driving the buggy. It became a car. It became the McLaughlin Car Company. And they produce limousines and stuff, and there's a story that King George back then, King George something, bought one of the limousines from the city. So famous was the city for car production. And what we saw was overnight, the city moved from an agricultural town into a major industrial city when this car company flourished. The car industry started booming from 1904, 1905, and by 1918, when they signed a deal with GM to open a plant here, the car industry was changing the world. Gas stations were opening everywhere. Roads were building, highways, bridges, industrialization took off. And for the past 100 years, For the past 100 years, the humanity on the face of the earth has been building an industrial world, a world of industrialization. We built factories, we moved people from, well, not we, but you know what I mean, humanity. We moved people from farms into factories. We moved people from feudalism, where one landlord would own, half the city, like all this area around here in Oshawa, were owned by maybe one or two landlords. And there were people renting pieces of that land. It happened all over China, India, Europe, all over the place. This is how society was back then. 100 years, just 100 years ago. It was an agricultural society. You had feudal lords who would own vast tracts of land, and they would rent pieces of that land to peasants who were farmers. The farmers would farm the land. Kids back then, maybe weren't going to school as much and all that kind of thing. But overnight the system changed. You found society started moving away from feudalism into people owning their own home, buying their own land, owning their own real estate, to the world we have today. So over the past 100 years, to make this story short and, for this broadcast, we moved from a farming agricultural society, okay, into an industrial world. Now, here is where we are. Industrialization, over the past 100 years, opened up so much for mankind, improved living standards. Workers worked and got mortgages and built houses and bought cars. Most families would have 2 cars. Living standards went through the roof. In developed countries, people were so happy because the 9 to 5, and you retire at 65, and you raise your kids and send them to good school and university, society was doing well. And then, of course, China, India, emerging economies, South Africa, Russia, after communism and all that, they started adopting the same system. And they would build, so all over the world you have basically the same system, right? You have cities building big malls and all those things, and then you have highways and roads and gas stations and cars. Human society is the same everywhere if you look at it in a high level. But anyway, today there's a thinking within the realm of those who, I want to be careful how I say this. There are people in the world who care about humanity. That's how I'm going to put it. There are people in the world who care deeply about the human race and how we're living and if we can sustain the life that we have. Can we, for example, continue building an industrial world, planting factories everywhere, building roads everywhere, cutting all the trees down for development, for industrialization? Can we continue to establish concrete and steel structures everywhere? And of course we come right smack into this debate about climate change, right? There is a thought form that is going on in the world, and it's becoming very, very mainstream, that the environment is the most important thing in life, right? So on this first episode of this broadcast, I want to talk about an important factor that decides the fate of humanity, of mankind, our fate. What's our fate? What decides our fate? And throughout history, we can see one thing: there is always an end to an age and a birth to a new age. So when I talked about 100 years ago, what happened to our city Oshawa when it moved from an agricultural society into an industrial city, what really happened was the end of an age had happened, because this happened globally. I mean, it didn't happen overnight just like that. Change was way slower than it's happening today. But eventually industrialization took over from the industrialization took over from the agricultural society, which had existed for a couple thousand years. But the change was slow. The point I'm making is this: we have to recognize that our generation, whether fortunately or unfortunately, is in the position of going through the end of one age, which is the age of industrialization, and the birth of a new age. And that age, the new age, of course, there's a whole slew of people in society who believe that the new age is a terrible thing, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And we're not here to talk about that. When I say the new age, I don't mean new age like the religion, the pagan religion. What I mean is literally there's a new age of mankind starting up. And some people have labeled it the information age. They used to talk about it a lot 20 years ago. Then some people said, okay, it's not the information age, it's much more than that. It's the knowledge age, right? And then some people label it the technological age. The thing is, it's all three. It's the information age, it's the knowledge age, and it is the technological age. So what defines this new tomorrow that we're going into is technology. What defines the new tomorrow that we're going into? Knowledge. And what defines the new tomorrow we're going into? Information. Hence our show, right? Knowledge, information, technology. So when COVID happened, we as a company decided, how do we move forward? We closed shop because the print industry doesn't work anymore, or we re-engineer everything using technology, gain more knowledge and see what's going on. And of course, information. Information is power. Information is everything. If you have the right information, people say, oh, I'm poor, I can't get out of this life of mere survival. I don't want to use the aphorisms we see online, which are one-liners that promise magic, but really and truly, every human being is one conversation away from their dream life. If you're poor and you want to be better off in life, acquire the right knowledge, acquire the right information, acquire the right technology, find the right person, have the right conversation, and boom, your life changes overnight. I've witnessed this, I experienced this. The point I'm making is that first, the new age we're moving into, first, the individual is fully empowered, and we're fully empowered within the conditions of acquiring information, knowledge, and the right technology, right? We got to be technologically savvy in the world we live in. But this first episode, I want to focus in on the fact that we're transitioning, this whole COVID situation is our generation going through what our foreparents went through 100 years ago. And 100 years ago, when one age ended, which is the agricultural age that ended, of course, remnants of an age remain. So we still have agriculture. We still have people making stuff with iron. So the Iron Age even, it continues. Remnants of the past still remain with us. We take it with us, right? Humanity moves with remnants of the past. But the new dominates. That's how it is. I hope that's not too complicated for I didn't confuse myself. Anyway, we have to recognize that there is such a thing, that one age ends and the other age begins. And that transition period is an important period for any generation that goes through it. Back 100 years ago, when our foreparents went through the transition from the agricultural age into the industrial age, when farms moved to factories, when workers transitioned from peasants on rented land into living in apartments and houses in the city, to drive, own your car, houses started getting driveways, and all those things. All those changes happened. We take those things for granted. And they would drive every morning to their factory and drive home every night to their home, and they watch TV, and they have their dinner, and they go to sleep and start the process again the next day, and do their 9 to 5 and live their life. And we invented a system of retirement where they would get a pension and they could relax in their old age and enjoy their life, hopefully. That system came into place 100 years ago when the age of humanity changed from agricultural to industrial age, right? Our foreparents back then, think of it, think of the transition they had to go through from about 1900 or even 18 something, late 1800s, to about 1925, even the 1930s when the Great Depression happened. They had to deal with was it the Spanish flu or whatever it was called. They had to deal with World War One. They had to deal with farms, decimation of farms everywhere, and the moving of, well, I mean, there was no deliberate shifting of population, but the population did shift into cities. People just couldn't depend on their farms anymore, and they went to factories looking for work when the war was over. It was a tremendously traumatic time. Now we are living in the same kind of transition period, except we don't have a world war. The only thing we're dealing with right now is the pandemic. Now the pandemic is not an easy thing, I agree. It's causing serious disruptions. But when an age ends, everything about that age is disrupted. Every single thing. And this episode of the show, which would be on our YouTube channel, the Future Stars Media Enterprise channel, just Google Future Stars Media Enterprise and you'll see all our videos as we build up this series. So it would always be online and also on Facebook, of course, our Facebook page, Future Stars Media Enterprise. Okay? And of course you see on the screen, you see our logo. Qualped is our major company. Under Qualped is the Millionaire Mindset magazine, and we have the Future Stars live streaming show, which is this kind of thing, and the other shows that we do. And of course, there is the overall philosophy of why we do what we do, which is we're authoring our future, and we want to bring in the audience of this show to join us, to engage with us, and let us do this and see how we could improve each other, right? On this first episode, what I want to deal with is the fact that we must be aware, we must be conscious, we must be enlightened to the idea that our generation, this generation, is in a transition period. We're in a transition mode. We're moving from the industrial society, from bricks and mortar and steel and concrete, right? From roads and cars and gas stations, from the way we live at home and we drive to work in the morning and then go back home in rush hour. So in the morning, this is what's going on in the world. We have in the world around 800 million cars, maybe a billion, but definitely around 800 million cars. And in China, in India, in South Africa, Brazil, Russia, these emerging economies, the car industry is people are suddenly coming from not having a car in their whole household to having 2-3 cars in their household. So cars are multiplying all over the world. Every morning, worldwide, east to west, north to south, what happens? Every working human being wakes up, gets into their car, drives to the factory or to their workplaces, their offices, and then after work in the afternoon, they drive home. So you have every morning 700-800 million cars, maybe a billion cars driving on the roads. And in the evening, they're driving back from work to home, home to work. That's the system of humanity if you do a total deduction to the basic common thing of how we live, our lifestyle. So our home life and our work life, what connected that was the transportation system, right? These cars, 700-800 million cars, every single day they're pouring into the atmosphere carbon monoxide on top of factories, on top of everything else that is producing pollution. Now think of this. The earth that we live on, around the earth, is a shield, an invisible shield, of course, where the atmosphere of the earth doesn't escape. It stays in the earth. The ozone layer is there. And the carbon monoxide that these 700-800 million cars produce daily, with driving in traffic in the morning, driving in traffic in the night, it stays in the atmosphere. And it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, which is the whole idea of global warming, right? Now nobody talks about global warming anymore because the term has become controversial and not maybe as politically correct as some people would like it to be. So they changed the terminology to climate change, right? We have to, in other words, it's a proactive now stance. It's not there's a problem of global warming. Now there is a solution, climate change, right? So they changed the language. When I say they, I mean the powers that be. There is such a thing. And later on in our series, we will explore some of those things. Who are the powers that be and how they operate and what's their agenda and all those things. Now, we are in a transition from that industrial age that caused roads, gas stations, cars, the transportation system, buses, trains, planes, all those things, daily by the billions of hours, right? Pollution pouring into the air. Whether this is so or not is not my point. My point is the scientists are saying that if industrialization continues as robustly as it has over the past 100 years and it expands to every corner of the planet, in other words, every society becomes developed as America and Canada and Europe, which is obviously what it should be, because you want equality and justice and all those things. Everybody should have equal access to the earth's resources. So one part of the earth can be developed and the other parts stay undeveloped. And we say, oh, pollution, you can't develop your country, right? Everybody has to be developed. So, but if we continue with the industrial age, this is the rationale of climate change. The planet is going to fall apart. We won't be able to breathe. In fact, right now, I can't remember the figures, but quite a few people, I think 8% of deaths in the US or something is because of pollution. But anyway, I don't want to get into convincing people about climate change and all that. All I'm saying is, this is factual, this is a factor that is going on in the world today. We are in a smack right middle, our generation, of a huge transformation going on. And there are three aspects to that transformation. The transformation is that one age is ending, the industrial age. It has outlived its usefulness. And there's a whole big ramifications of that, like the materialism, the consumerism, the economic nature of that. And the second episode that we're doing of this broadcast, look out for it, it is going to be on the economic system. When people say, oh, our economy is being affected and we can't earn money and our business is not making money, that is a big question that we want to deal with in the next episode of this show, Authoring Our Future. That's the name of the show, Authoring Our Future, on the Qualped platform. We are in a transition period where, because that one age is ending, when an age ends, what happens? Disruption, massive, massive, massive disruption. And the most fundamental thing of the industrial age is the economic system. The whole world was based on economics, right? And next episode, we're going to deal purely with economics. How it started, why it started, how the world became so embedded in an economic worldview. We'll deal with that. That is an important thing for us to know individually. And we'll deal with it in the next episode. So, disruption is happening everywhere because the age is ending. Let's be aware of this, right? Don't freak out and say, oh, government is doing this to us and doing that. Government is not necessarily, may have our best interest at heart. But to sit there blaming government and say we're victims is not fruitful, is it? We want to be more proactive than that, and more empowered is the word. We are powerful, the individual, and that's the message we want to really get over to people. We can invent our tomorrow, we can create our tomorrow, we can design how the future looks, right? And how the future is for us and our kids and generations to come. So there's huge disruption going on. We want to accept that fact and learn how to deal with it. The second thing that is going on is that a new world is birthing. So there's an innovation. So disruption is happening, but at the same time, parallel to that is this new world of innovation and new things, new inventions. Like, for example, a lot of the stuff that we live with today did not exist 15 years ago. You're looking at YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, the whole social media world, Netflix, right? Which I spend a lot of time watching Netflix because I love movies and I learn a lot, just like reading literature. These things, this live streaming, we couldn't do it even 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. We couldn't. The investment that it would have taken to build this studio and do what we're doing, now it's way easier to do than before, right? So invention is happening, innovation is happening, a new world is emerging. So as disruption is happening, I don't like this word, but as the death of an age is going on, guess what? There's the birth of a new age. So the first thing that is happening, we have to accept the fact and live with it and somehow learn to deal with it, which is what we hope to create kind of a consciousness in this broadcast. The episodes that we, over the next 12 weeks, is let us face the fact that we are in a period of extreme disruption, right? Massive disruption, foundational disruption. Disruption of the systems and the structures of this world system, which was developed over the period of 100 years, from the early 1900s or even before, in the late 1800s to now, right? The industrial age. There's disruption of that. We'll delve into it more as we go along in subsequent episodes. The second thing that is going on is innovation. Something is birthing, something new is coming into being. What is that new thing? How can we fit into it? How can we benefit from it? How can we contribute to it? How can we play that role of proactive and confident and engaging into that new thing that is emerging, instead of playing a role of victim and poor me and what am I going to do? You know, we're human beings. We're human beings. That is an important fact. Now, the third thing that is going on, here's the third amazing thing that is going on. The human being, especially our children, I have a son, Prince, who is 14 years old, and I'm so excited about his future. The reason is, the third thing that is going on in society right now, at no time in human history has the individual person been more empowered than today. Largely because of technology. We have at our fingertips enormous amount of power. We don't have to find a library anymore. We don't have to find an encyclopedia. We can create courses out of what we know. Somebody retires at 65. You have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of ability and skills and life experience. You can literally put this into a course online and contribute to humanity. The third major thing that is going on, which is what we're excited about, which is why we're doing the show, which is why we're saying we can alter our future. Each individually we can do it, but we have to come together. We have to work together, right? We have one of the episodes that we deal with that we are going to broadcast. We'll deal with our story. How powerful is your story, which is unique and individual. I died today, my story goes with me. It's so unique, so original that nobody else has my story. And that's powerful. That's my greatest asset, if we can tell our story. And so join me in the second episode, the third episode, the fourth episode. Let's have a conversation. Whoever is watching here, I know the audience is small, but whoever is watching right now, share this with your friends. Share the YouTube video. Share the Facebook video. Let your friends know that we're starting a conversation here. That is the reason we're starting this conversation. You know why? It's not going on anywhere else. I don't hear this conversation anywhere. There are people talking about the future, and a lot of futurists are out there. People like Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil and all these great guys, but they're very, intellectual, very academic. It's Dr. Mark Carney did a 4-part lecture at BBC on the BBC lecture series. talking about the immediate future, what is going to happen this year and next year. The third wave was coming. I was telling my friends and family the third wave was coming. Why? How do I know these things? Because I listen to what is going on out there, right? We are enormously powerful today, each one of us, and we can create whatever possibility we want to create within, of course, reason. You can't, there's gravity, so we can't get up and flap our hands and fly, right? We have to consider what is there and build around it, but we are so powerful today, and we can create whatever possibility. This, I would, if you get nothing else from this broadcast, get this: you can create whatever new possibility you want if you start writing your future. And that's what we want to awake that consciousness in each person who listens to us, who engages with us. And in creating that new possibility, there's only one way we can do that. There's only one thing that can cause us to jump out of bed in the morning and say, yes, I'll tackle life. Because when you create a new possibility, you're excited, you're confident, you're like full of energy. It drives us. There's no defeat in our heart. There's only courage and an excitement for the future, because we're creating our own future. Listen, whatever is going on with COVID, whatever is going on with the economy, whatever is going on with society, whatever is going on in the world, you as an individual, I as an individual, we are today more powerful than any of our foreparents in any of the generations that came before us. We're powerful individually. I want you to believe this. The first thing that happens with success in life is belief. You have to believe it. Once you believe it, you can make it happen. For example, do you know there are 50,000 ebooks, apart from thousands of audiobooks, that are available online for free? The first-year textbooks of Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge, all these major universities, elite universities, the first-year textbooks of all those places, which used to be only available to elite, privileged, and bright scholars. Those books are now available to us online. We can read Shakespeare and get critique on Hamlet. We can read James Joyce and Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. We can delve into the most deepest work. We can read, you can go online and read for free Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, which gave birth to the economic system that we live in, which we'll talk about one day. So I delve into these books. That's what I do. I spend my time reading. I love wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I love it. It's my one thing I live for: wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And whatever I'm learning, I want us to engage on it. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm not seeing things. I have blind spots that I can't see. Enlighten me as well. But I'm going to share with you the things that I'm finding. We, my friend, are very, very powerful if we realize that the age that we are entering, we're on the ground floor. Our generation is on the ground floor. It's like when they were moving from horse and buggy back in the day, in the early 1900s, into motor cars. Those who were able to get into a motor car were on the ground floor of a new industrial age. The people who were able to build buildings back then, you could get steel and concrete. You know, the richest man in the early 1900s was Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie built all the public libraries in the world. That's how I know him, because he related the books. He built every single public library in the world because he was so rich. He was the richest man in the world. Do we know that? The average person? No. Nobody cares who was the richest man in 1920 or 1925 or 1940. Nobody cares, because that's not important. But we care that he built every single public library in the world, and therefore we know, like Bill Gates today and Jeff Bezos and all those guys, the richest guys in the world, Warren Buffett, back then he was the only richest guy. And the reason he was the richest guy was because he took advantage. Not took advantage, that's the wrong word. He was on the ground, he got in on the ground floor of the new age that was starting up. This age of industrialization. So guess what he did? He invented aluminum pots and pans and cutleries and all those aluminum stuff that we had all those years. Guess who? He invented it. He took the aluminum and started making all kinds of stuff that we could use, the man could use. Believe it or not, before the 1920s and 1930s, those things didn't exist. Our foreparents back in the 1800s didn't have aluminum forks and knives and spoon. We take these things for granted. So my friend, I thank you for joining me today. Thank you so much. It's a privilege talking to you, and please engage with me. Let me know what you would like to hear, any questions you have, any suggestions you have, any ideas. You want to contribute something to the show, let me know, okay? Engage with me. We'll develop this as we go along on social media, and I will let you know as we put out our magazine, our daily newspaper, our headline site online, all these things, the courses we're doing, we have books coming out, all these things. We have merchandise, of course, on our e-commerce site. So we'll roll out all of this to you as we go along. For now, let us come together to see how we can empower, enlighten, and engage with each other in a time when most of the world is just panicking, right? When people are protesting everywhere and saying, oh, let's put an end to lockdown. Let's understand what's going on. Let's live this life with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thank you very much.